Tell me that we never played any part. We know our history. From the night valley, tell the truth to humanity, keeping the true wisdom of the man. We know that this conspiracy will not last, 'cause we know our history. We are from the night valley, tell the truth to humanity. We all know your aim. Come on, historian. We all have a claim to fame. Time to let the word out, let the word out. We all know your aim. Come on, historian. We all have a claim to fame.
Alright. Greetings, another iBlock Sunday School session. I'm on block. Chance block. Again, this is the site for deep consideration. The song you hear in the background will soon fade away. It's by Marogini, reminding us that we are the people of the Nile Valley culture. This is iBlock Sunday School. Get out the thoughts, get out the fears, put your thoughts together, and we will explore the origin and the genesis and many of our fears. Our meaning we, the black people, the African people, our fundamental fears that have been enforced over centuries. Yet the time must come to reclaim Nile Valley culture. We know who built the pyramids, but we're not convinced that it is I. iBlock Sunday School continues to explore the three critical books of the King James Version of reality: Genesis, the Exodus, and the book of Revelations. And in a continuous examination, I find the courage to put forward the questions that we were unable to forward as we were children, under the whip of punishment and under the discipline of obedience, and all of these things crushed our thinking process and encouraged us to mimic, encouraged us to memorize, but discouraged us from thinking. So iBlock Sunday School is the platform where the thinking doesn't exist, neither within or without a box. In other words, there's no box, unless you're going to consider the brain to be a black box. This particular episode, again, deals with the aspect of our story that is considered history, and much of what is his story we consider to be our history, our story. Clarity is needed. The drive to know oneself and to be able to believe in yourself and all of these things about the self. We have to know about the genesis of the self. Where did the idea of the self come from? And as descendants and as relatives of the exploited class of race of African people, what do we know? What do we know that we have not been told? So at the fundamental of this particular episode is the relationship between our most primal, quote unquote, education system and the condition that we are held in as a race globally. Is a relationship between the most primal education we get exposed to all black people in the Western world, especially those who have been under captivity, colonialism. If within that education system there is something that has pegged us into a state of inertia, and why is it for so many centuries the cry is the same, black people don't like themselves? As much as the education has been exposed to us and the political machinery and the economics, the cry remains the same. Black people don't like themselves. So it forces us to wonder where that concept come from. Where did we pick up that early information about whether ourselves are worthy to be liked, and why should we like ourselves, and versus why do we hate ourselves? Where did all that begin? Because look at it. In conception, that infant has no knowledge of these ideas. That infant's brain is open to all thoughts and vibrations. But knowledge as it relates to society is absent. So where did this child, and when did the child acquire this idea that they are inferior? Where did they pick up the idea that they represent evil? And that to look at black is look at a black cat is to see evil. How did we arrive at this meditation that has remained permanent even in our most educated and most advanced cultural people? So I'm saying it all relates to what we have all been exposed to, which is Sunday school, plantation system Sunday school, under the influence of that one book called the Bible. And so it is in this book that the captivity has begun for the mind of the enslaved black people, the minds. And you begin by putting the people under a spell, a story that captures the imagination, and no other story can capture the imagination at one that begins by saying in the beginning. Even more powerful than once upon a time. In the beginning. So this particular Sunday school, I will read the first verse in the first chapter of what has been given to us as our beginning. And let us review what is it has said. Because in the Sunday school, couldn't ask anything directly about these kind of issues. So what does it say? And nearly everybody has it in their own memory. In the teachings of the indoctrination of the 100 years, we can say without looking, without looking. How does this begin? It says, in the beginning, God created heaven and the earth. Full stop. We query that not. And this is a profound statement. So we are in awe. So we have in our imaginary mind a God and a creation of the heaven and the earth. Now we're going to look at the story now about the earth. This is where I and I have been located on the earth. So how does the story gives us information now about the history of this earth that we are in? Because we have to acknowledge that we are living on a plane, a planet, a plane, and we call it Earth. So what does the story tell us now about Earth? And the earth was without form. What does form mean? Life form. So we're gone into language that is no longer literal. because these events cannot be experienced by any mind of man in a practical sense, because there is no man, there is no people, there is no even earth yet. So we are examining what has come out of the imagination of men. Once we begin to realize and begin to disassociate the emotional ownings of this story, it says, in the beginning, God created heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void. What does void mean? So the earth was without form and void. Now, how much black people in the plantation system and life, and even in the educational system, know what those two words mean? What does void mean? Cancel. So we into the them language and the confusion begins. And we never question these things. We all internalize it and accept it without any cloud. Become foundation. By the time comes, we have to visit the foundation. If we're not moving, if we can't shift that foundation to a different level, we have to check it. So here it is. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. That is not literal English. And darkness, which is what is darkness? Question mark. But it was upon the face of the deep. Face, human face, face of man, surface of the deep, deep suggesting what? Ocean, water. This is the linguistic that we go interrogate. And we leave it to white people tell us what these things mean, but they confound our imagination. So this is the earth now that we are on now, We're claiming that Africa is the most important continent and riches of the earth now. This is where they're telling us the earth coming from. That it was void and without form, and that darkness, which is what we have to question now. What is darkness? What is this darkness that was upon the face of the deep? Darkness. So just some kind of force. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So this is all supposed to be mystical events taking place now on the planet Earth. There's no human beings, no thing. This is some things transforming, and we are just mystified as young slaves and people in captivity. Our imagination captured, and we are viewing these things. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. No. God turn a switch. God turn on a switch and say, "Let there be light." So is this the creation of the sun? Because our long imagination, when we think about light, we think about the sun. So the sun comes on after the earth. That was void and darkness covered the earth. We are to accept as young astronomers that the earth was created before the sun. African astronomy can't connect with that type of reasoning. But we acknowledge the sun as the most ancient body in the system of the solar system. Is the sun the most ancient at the very center? There's right away we are being knocked off our astronomical construction of our own self without investigating it. We're taking it in because of the story of creation. And God saw the light. And this is where I want I to pay attention now. And God saw the light. that it was good. And God separated the light, which was good, from the darkness, which was not good. It's the first time we're being introduced to the concept of good. Right in that early book of Genesis in chapter 1, verses 1 to 5. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So segregation and separation into the concept of light and day, and the idea of them being set as opposites to each other, and one being placed to be superior than the other. So in this story, we are told that God separated the light from the dark, and the light was good. So the mind implies that the other side that you're separated from is not good. So I'm suggesting, without going much further, that the deepest level of indoctrination as it relates to the negativity of black and darkness comes from that very line in the book of Genesis. And it's a virus exposed to all African people who have been exposed to this story. That God separated the light from the dark, and the light was good. And through the light we shall achieve and succeed, and the darkness overcomes the evil. And we begin to internalize the idea of darkness as being evil and wicked. And then the white man puts it in his dictionary. The white is a symbolism of purity and cleanliness. God and Jesus and salvation. Dark is evil, negative, dirty, unjust. So it begins in the early indoctrination. Before we get to basic school and primary school, I have been indoctrinated into the idea of darkness as being evil. And it is corroborated now with the story of good and evil. And that the serpent, the devil, was black. So we carry on this notion of black being the source of evil, and black representing negativity. But I'm just looking at the foundation. It's in our indoctrination to Sunday school, the Bible, the book of Genesis, chapter 1. The God of creation that they give us created heaven and earth. And this earth was said to be void and without any life form. All that was present was darkness upon the face of the deep. Darkness, which is the foundation of I and I know as black people. We are dark-skinned people. And out of that darkness, we hear that comes forth the light. So the foundation of the multiverse, foundation of the universe, is darkness. And darkness now is an aspect of a relationship to light. Both of them are found within the bigger cosmic blackness. So we hear about dark holes and dark energy and dark matter. We must know that we, the dark-skinned people, are powerful beings. It's a lack of knowledge and the indoctrination that convinces us that dark skin is negative. So this is it for I Black Sunday School. If you have a perspective on where and how did we get to the point where we hate things that are dark, this is not really what we're even told officially. But where does the indoctrination come from? I'm suggesting it comes from the Bible story. And it comes from the most fundamental Bible story, the Genesis. And when you use the imagination and you carry it out into the Garden of Eden, the serpent appears to be black. Because you're moving along the line of interpretation that things that are in the dark are evil. But the thing, so the powers of darkness, powers of melanin and melatonin, and the powers that are manifested during darkness are ignored. The function of the pineal gland, and how we are energized through darkness as an aspect of energy. Light travels at 187,000 feet per second. Darkness is moving at 100 times exponentially faster. Then we have to begin to recreate our own knowledge. And so we're going to free ourselves from the hatred of darkness and blackness by just revisiting that story about the God that they tell us that created light and darkness and separate them. Light and dark are not separate, they are continuous. They complement each other's natural forces, like male and female. They put them into a context of being in opposition, opposite gender. I and I not coming from the opposition gender. We've always complemented each other. Whether it's 60-40 or 70-30, but we get 100% in combination. So we have to break out of that spell that has captured our whole race to a story. Deep psychology planted into the story, where we begin to deal with a God of separation, separating night from day and making one good and one not good, separating gender and the male and comes out of the female, yet the female is inferior. We don't get that type of confliction. So, couldn't ask the pastor, couldn't ask the preacher man, couldn't ask him about the essence of creation. But they themselves were afraid to think about it. But I love Sunday school is about thinking without fear. So, any input, drop me an email, iblock@yahoo.com, or you get me a reply on your Facebook page, Black I'm on Block. I'll keep the investigation going. Because there must be something why we all fall down up and cry that black people say what them one another and black people disboard each other, and we never really try to find out what is it that makes everything go so common. Where that self-hatred seed, where was it ever planted? And planted from one days of our foreparents. It's through the same Sunday school stories. So we have to revisit this God of separation, this creation story where we are stuck in the beginning, and in that beginning all things that are dark are evil. Yet, the first line says, in the beginning, God created heaven and the earth. Heaven, not a dimension of examination. So we're thinking it through. To many, heaven is be a state of mind. Earth could represent the body. Heaven and earth, the body and the mind. All different ways of interpreting the mind and language. So, leave it at that. Yeah, Rastafari. Yeah, so we're going to wrap up this reason. We have been convinced over time that out of darkness came forth the light. And the light is what's going to set us free because we can see. So what about the foundation that ability to see is coming from? The darkness must be the foundation. So we have to move away from the fear of darkness. Realize that it's just the light of the sun in a different place. And darkness is very important for the balance of plant life and animal kingdom, etc. So we have to return to the notion of fearlessness about the dark. And think that is only evil occur in the dark. Some of the most vicious things and wars and destruction take place in the broad daylight. And the symbolism of the light now becomes problematic. Because we are indoctrinated now to think that the light is the truth. But the light symbolizes the truth. And what is more symbolic of the truth than Jesus? They tell us that Jesus is the light and the truth and the way. So anything that is opposing that light, truth, and way is evil. What I think. So, meditation, we have to stay away from darkness, see? Because who wants to be identified now with evil and the source of wrong? It's a psychology. It's a psychology. And to top it off now, light is not white. You see, light that they wanted us to accept as the truth and the light. Light is not white. Light is colorless. Light is natural, like water. So it's just a European twisting and turning the language to get us to have a direct hatred towards the idea of love. The Europeans embrace the idea of a handsome man as being tall, dark, and handsome. And yet the dark-skinned people are being convinced that they are too dark. And their success will come if they bleach out their darkness. You see the paradox and the confusion? The people of dark skin are in such a bind, a lack of knowledge of their own darkness, that they are still into the rhythm of darkness being evil. And Africa, the dark continent, we have to shape out that 2,000 years of negative definition. I recognize the power of dark skin, black, pigmentation, melanin. These are the forces that we need to engage with now to get out of the idea of black being an inferior condition. Judges wear black, graduation coat, cap is black. Black is a symbol of seriousness. Black is a symbol of energy. It's redefinition time. I Black Sunday School. BLAK, there is no C. In black, there is no lack. BLAK, power.